Last year, we had a new credit. It was the Volunteer Emergency Worker Credit. We still have that credit this year. We have added to it a little bit. For tax years beginning on or after January 1 of 23 and beginning prior to January 1 of 28, each individual who serves as a volunteer emergency worker for at least 9 months during the taxable year and does not receive compensation for their volunteer emergency work of more than $5,000 may apply for this credit. It is a non-refundable credit. And what that means is it can lower your tax liability to zero. It cannot generate a refund. If you do not use it all in this tax year, you cannot carry it forward. The VEW credit will include not only volunteer emergency workers, but starting with tax year 2024, it also includes Illinois Emergency Management Agency volunteers, or IEMA volunteers. The volunteer emergency worker must have volunteered with a county or municipal emergency service and disaster agency pursuant to the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act for at least 100 hours. The process involving IEMA is still being developed, so more information will be available on our website. And as soon as we have all that worked out and everything settled, we will be putting it out on our website what that process will be. What is a volunteer emergency worker? It is a person who serves as a member other than a full-time career basis of a fire department, fire protection district, or fire protection association that has a fire department identification number, or an FDIN, that's issued by the state fire marshal's office. And they do not serve as a member on a full-time career basis for another fire department, fire protection district, or fire protection association. So I'm located in Springfield. Our Springfield Fire Department is paid. They cannot claim the credit. Rochester, which is the town right outside, they are all volunteer. So if they volunteer at least 900 hours in a year and are reimbursed less than $5,000, they will qualify for the credit. Or a government entity, or is a volunteer of a county or municipal emergency service and disaster pursuant to the IEMA Act. Now, when it's talking about a governmental entity, out here at the airport in Springfield, Illinois, we used to have a National Guard unit. Their job was to be the fire department for the airport. They would not qualify because the National Guard is a government agency or government entity. Those do not count. If you want more information, you can go to our Public Act 103-0009 and also Public Act 103-0592. What is this credit that I keep talking about? The volunteer emergency worker credit is $500. It's non-refundable. It can be used to reduce your tax liability to zero. The credit is awarded to volunteer emergency workers. They have to apply for the credit and be awarded the credit. The trick with this is it has a cap of $5 million. So with the $5 million cap, that means 10,000 people are eligible to apply for and receive this credit because we award them in $500 increments. You may not need it all, but you're going to get awarded $500. You may only need to use $200 to lower your tax liability to zero. The remaining $300 will not be used. It does not go back into the $5 million that we can give out. We award it in $500 increments. Non-refundable tax credits are applied to your Illinois income tax before withholding and your refundable credits. This is going to go on your schedule ICR. These credits help reduce your tax liability but cannot result in a refund of any credit amount. How do I qualify for this credit? You must have served as a volunteer emergency worker for at least 9 months during the taxable year. Have not received compensation for your services as a volunteer emergency worker of more than $5,000 during the taxable year. Have volunteered with a county or municipal emergency service and disaster agency pursuant to the Illinois Emergency Management Act for at least 100 hours if you're applying for IEMA. So we've got two different time frames. The volunteer emergency worker, so your volunteer firefighters, 900 hours. Through the IEMA, you're 100 hours. You're going to submit an online application with the Department of Revenue, and this process will open up early next year. It will be on our MyTax website, and you must be one of the first 10,000 qualified applicants because we award it in $500 increments, and 10,000 is all we're allowed to award. To apply, if you are a volunteer emergency worker, you need to make sure that you are included by your fire chief in the list that he sends to the state fire marshal's office. And once it comes from the state fire marshal's office, they will share that file with us. And then you need to make sure that you're included. If you're going through the IEMA portion, you have to be included on the file that's sent to IEMA from the local emergency service. So either the fire chief or the local emergency service has to send it to the state fire marshal's office and IEMA. They in turn will send that list to the Department of Revenue in January. For the state fire marshals, for the state fire marshal in January, you should be able to look up on their website the list to see if you've been included on that list. When the application process opens up and goes online, you can go out to mytax.illinois and complete the application process. When you apply, you need some basic information. First and last names as it's listed coming over from the State Fire Marshal Office or IEMA. We need your complete address. We need your social security number. We need your email address. And in a couple of slides here, I'll tell you why that email address is very, very important. We need the fire district, the fire department, or the fire association's name, the fire chief's name, city or county location, and the fire department identification number, or FDID, for which you volunteer. If you're coming through IEMA, we need your IEMA identification number. If the information that you submitted matches the information that's provided either by the State Fire Marshal's Office or IEMA, and you're one of the first 10,000 applicants, you will receive an email with directions on obtaining your certificate that will have an identifying number on it that verifies your credit. You will need that identifying number when you are completing the Schedule ICR. If the information you submitted does not match the information that's provided by the State Fire Marshal's Office or IEMA, you will receive a denial of the credit. If there's a question about the information you provided, we will contact you by email. That is why this email address is very important. Everything for this credit will be done via email. So once you get your approval, it'll be through the email. If there's a problem or it's denied, it'll be through the email. If there is a problem with it and we're trying to get it figured out and we contact you and say, hey, we need you to send us this information, it has to be sent back through that email address. And I'll give you the email address in a minute here, so you know what to watch for in your emails. You will have 10 business days to respond because this credit is limited to 10,000 people. We are holding up people filing their tax returns. That's why we're doing everything through email, and we're putting that 10-day turnaround time on. The portion is still being developed for IEMA, so please check out our website at tax.illinois.gov for more updates, as well as dates for submissions and when the application process opens, both for the volunteer emergency worker firefighters and IEMA. Can I receive a refund off this credit? Like I've mentioned a couple of times before, No, you can't. It is a $500 non-refundable credit, which means that the credit is only able to reduce your tax liability to zero. It cannot generate a refund. It is applied after any property tax credit is applied towards your tax liability, and it is applied after any of your K through 12 education expense credits for your kids in grades K through 12. And it is applied before the refundable credits, your withholding payments, your earned income tax credit. Those are refundable, so it's applied before that. You must file an income tax IL 1040 and the Schedule ICR if you want to claim this credit. A lot of, in your smaller rural communities, a lot of your volunteer firefighters are retirees. Their income is not taxable in Illinois, and they may have a very small tax liability that their property tax credit wipes out. It is not beneficial for them to apply for this credit because they're going to get the $500 credit. They're not going to have any tax left to apply it to, so that $500 is just going to not be used, and someone who could use it may not be able to get the credit. How will I know if I receive the credit? After you do your online application through MyTax, the information you submitted, if it matches perfectly with what the state fire marshal or IEMA sent us, and you're one of the first 10,000, you will receive an email from, and here's the magic email address, rev.vewcredit@illinois.gov. This email will give you instructions on how to get your certificate number that you need to use on the Schedule ICR's verification. If the information you submitted does not match the information provided by the State Fire Marshal Office or IEMA, you will receive an email from that same magic address, rev.vewcredit@illinois.gov, denying the credit. Maybe you weren't included on the list, something like that. If there's a question about the information you provide, we will send you an email, same magic email address, requesting more information, and you'll have 10 business days to respond. If you do not respond in 10 business days, you will forfeit the credit. You cannot, if we send out an email asking for more information, you cannot upload it through MyTax. You cannot drop it off at one of our district offices, even though they may be down the street from you. You cannot put it in the US mail. It has to come in through that email address at rev.vewcredit@illinois.gov. This email address cannot be used to check on the status of your credit. On our website, we have a refund lookup portal where you can go in and check the status of your refund. There is also a VEW credit lookup portal where you can go out and check the status of it. It's set up a lot like the refund portal is. So use the lookup portal to check the status. Be watching that for that email address. If you know that you applied for it and you haven't heard anything, check your spam or junk and see if it landed in there, because the approval, the denial, or more information needed will all come from that rev.vewcredit@illinois.gov. How do I use this credit? If you look on the side of the screen, you will see it is in section C of the Schedule ICR. So it's on the very last page of the ICR. It's the only thing on that page. And it's pretty easy to fill out. You will have a certificate number. If you're married and you both volunteer, you each can have a certificate. So you each can get $500. So a joint return and you both volunteer for the local fire department, or maybe one does fire department and one does IEMA. You both are eligible to apply for this certificate, provided you meet the criteria of the number of hours that you're required to volunteer for each one. You will list each certificate number if there's more than one. And then on line 10C, 10C is going to have one of three numbers. It'll be a 0 if you don't qualify for it, $500 if one of you qualifies for it, or $1,000 if you both qualify for it. You'll put that on line 10C. Line 11, all you're doing is comparing the amount of credit that you're able to take for this volunteer emergency worker credit on line 10C with line 9, your tax that's left over. Whichever's less, you're going to put on line 11. And then line 12 is just do a little simple math, subtract the credit from your tax, and there's what you have left over. Okay, pretty easy to fill out. Some helpful reminders for this credit. The fire chief must submit all eligible volunteers to the state fire marshal office. So if you're volunteering with the fire department right now, start getting on your fire chief to make sure he's working on that list for everybody in the fire department that qualifies for it. So they can submit it to the state fire marshal. The local emergency service or disaster, they must submit all eligible volunteers to IEMA, who in turn, both of them will send the Department of Revenue a list that we will match up with everybody who goes out through our website and applies that away. When applying, whether you want to do it the way the name appears on the list that was submitted to us. If your fire chief is sending your name over as Timothy Smith, make sure when you apply through the My Tax credit, you're using Timothy Smith. One thing they will look at, and they are real good at looking at, is it came through as Timothy Smith. This one says Tim Smith. They're pretty good. If everything else matches up, they're real good about figuring out Tim, Timothy, they're the same. It's when you go by, your name may be Doug, but you go by Jack. And that one's a little harder to figure out that it does match up. Even though the address and the social security number and everything else matches up, we're still not quite sure on that. Tim, Timothy, Rob, Roberts, William, and Bill's pretty good about figuring those out. But try to make sure you're applying with the same name as is being submitted to us. One thing to plan on doing, just plan on printing out the certificate. It's better safe than sorry to have that paper documentation in front of you, either whether you print it out or you download it and save it on your computer, just so you've got it at your fingertips if you need it. If they are a first-time filer with the department, they will still be able to apply online for the credit. Plans are to use the Illinois driver's license or your Illinois state ID. So you will still have that option as a first-time filer. All correspondence will be done through email. If there are problems, the department will email the taxpayer, and any requested information must be submitted via email. Taxpayers will not be allowed to check on the status through that rev.vewcredit@illinois.gov email address, because you can do that through the lookup portal on My Tax Illinois.